Welcome, everybody. Opening statements today in the retrial of a man accused of murdering a mother and her 3 children. Prosecutors say Henry Segura is the one who in 2010 killed his girlfriend, Brandy Peters, their 3-year-old child, and Peters' twin 6-year-old daughters. Prosecutors say Segura owed Peters $20 grand in child support and was cheating on his wife with her. Segura says he's innocent and that Peters was the victim of a drug cartel. He says she skimmed $100,000 in drug dollars and that the cartel left a calling card when it killed her and the children. A jury was hung in Segura's first trial after 19 hours of deliberations. Here's the state's opening statement this time around.
On November 20th, 2010, law enforcement officers responded to 908 Saddle Creek Run. Brandy Peters brutally shot and beaten. In the back room, they found Tamaya, Tanaya, and Javante in the bathtub. One of them shot, 2 of them drowned. And what the evidence is going to show you is that Henry Segura is responsible for the murders. He was interviewed by Tallahassee Police Department on 2 different occasions. First one was to notify them of the death of his son. He said, "I was not there, I was at home the entire time." Tallahassee Police Department did their investigation, realized he was lying, called him in for a second interview to clarify. "I was at home all the time. Check my cell phone records. They say I was there." But he made a mistake. He thought he could pull one over the eyes of the Tallahassee Police Department. What they did is they found out he had a separate phone number that he didn't tell them about. And what they did when they checked that cell phone record is they determined he was in fact there at the time that Brandy Peters and the kids were killed.
Prosecutors say Henry Segura had the motive, the means, and the opportunity to commit all 4 murders.
You're going to hear that this was not a forced entry. The door wasn't kicked in. It was kicked in eventually by law enforcement, but when they respond, nobody kicked the door in. Nobody forced their entry. So somebody was led into this home. You're going to have an opportunity to see it. Henry Segura is told his son is killed. Doesn't show any emotion. So now the next question is, was there motive? And what we find out is shortly there before this murder occurred, Henry Segura is behind on his child support payments of over $20,000. You're also going to hear from a friend of his, lifelong friend of his, and what he's going to tell you is that he's also a welder at the time. He and Henry were talking about getting a job over in Afghanistan. Lots of money to be made over in Afghanistan during this time period, doing welding and things, 6-figure jobs. But to go to Afghanistan, you have to have a visa from the United States and Afghanistan to travel to and from. The problem with that is he can't get one if he owes over $2,500 in child support. Does he have the strength to carry it out? Again, as I said, one of these blows crushed the skull. Does he have the strength? I'd say he does.
Segura's defense admits that Segura is not a perfect client. He was having extramarital affairs with the victim and other women, but the defense insists that does not make him a killer.
Another child's mother that Mr. Segura had previously, Tamika Hawkins, who hates his guts but will testify on his behalf in this case, she had obtained a child support judgment of an almost identical amount some years before this happened, and it was still in place. Mr. Segura has not ever, and will not in this case at this time, hide behind his Fifth Amendment right, although he has a right to do that, and although you wouldn't be able to hold it against him if he did that. He'll take the stand, and he'll testify, and he'll tell you his side of the story. And what you'll hear, it's kind of difficult for me to articulate this, but Mr. Segura's quote is probably most apt, which is that there ain't no black man anywhere in America killing somebody over child support. That's just not something that happens. It's something that he says culturally, you just deal with. You know how to deal with. Nobody's killing anybody over child support.
Segura's defense says others did have the motive to kill Brandy Peters, including cartel members who learned Peters had skimmed $100,000 from her drug runs while she allegedly worked as a cocaine mule. One of those gang members is expected to testify.
Santos will admit to you that he ordered the murders, that he orchestrated the murders, that he recruited a local trap team, DeMario Paramore and Haywood Griffin, who were other drug traffickers based in Tallahassee, not on the level that Mr. Santos was, to serve as the local guys to kind of show his team, his drug cartel associates, how to get in and out of Brandy's neighborhood. Next to the victim's body, there was a spade placed. The shovel was not apparently used in the murder. It had no DNA from Ms. Peters on it. We've got foreign male DNA on the shovel placed next to the victim's body. Mr. Segura, by the way, is excluded as a contributor to the foreign male DNA found on the shovel. We also have foreign female DNA found under the victim's fingernail. And one of the things that you'll see is that Brandy Peters fought valiantly in this case for herself and for her children, to the point where all her knuckles are broken and bruised, and her acrylic nails have been ripped off.
With us tonight, our attorney Paula Notari and Law and Crime host Stacey Delicat. So Stacey, the unknown DNA makes me nervous, but what's the deal about this Spade? Is that a calling card for some kind of a gang or cartel killing?
Well, we've been talking about this all afternoon because in the first trial, the defense brought on an expert witness to testify about gangs who said, yes, with the vice lords who apparently were working with Los Velas Mexican cartel, this Spade is a kind of calling card. And if someone didn't put it there deliberately, I mean, it's kind of a random thing to have in a living room and the site of a crime like this. I mean, they said there was no blood on the Spade, so it wasn't used as a weapon. It was just presumably placed there. So we expect that we'll hear the same witness testify again that this is some kind of hallmark of this gang.
Yeah, it's just sort of a random thing to see there. So Paula, the defense also says it has information about some kind of an undercover recording where the cousin of an informant, also with gang ties, confesses to the crime. What's weird about that is prosecution says the informant isn't credible. Don't prosecutors usually rely on informants?
Not only did the prosecution rely upon this informant, but once they know that this taping exists, they don't follow up on any of the forensic evidence. We have a very extensive crime scene. We have all kinds of blood, and no one has tested this crime scene evidence to see if it matches up with the suspects that come through this recording, which is, again, it's troubling. This is a very, 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 in my mind, a very bad prosecution.
And Stacey, we also have issues about the timeline here. We've got prosecutors saying the victim was killed between 6:50 and 8 p.m. We've got a sister who's expected to testify that she spoke with the victim at 10 p.m. So if the timeline doesn't line up, does the state's case fall apart?
I mean, it certainly pokes holes in it. It certainly makes you think, they don't have something quite right, so how can we rely on the rest of the case they're putting on? I mean, it presents questions, and questions is not what the prosecution wants the jury to have ultimately.
Well, look, I mean, the jury is allowed to have them. The burden of proof is high here. We'll watch this one as it rolls along. The first witness to testify was a neighbor to the victims. He was 14 years old on the morning of November 20th, 2010. His mom asked him to go across the street and check on victim Brandy Peters because Peters was not returning phone calls.
And she was like, go over there and tell Brandy to call her mama, because couldn't nobody get in contact with her. I'm like, all right, that ain't nothing.
Did you go over there?
Yes, sir.
When you got to her house, what did you do?
Well, I tried to ring the doorbell, but the doorbell was busting. I seen blood, and I'm knocking on the door. I'm thinking like,
Let me stop you right there. You said the doorbell was busted?
Yes, sir.
What do you mean it was busted? It was broken off or just wasn't working?
It was like pushed in.
Okay.
Like you can't ring it,
Okay. And you said you saw something, blood?
Blood.
Where'd you see blood at?
I saw it as I was walking up. I saw it drip drops. I'm thinking a kid hurt himself, but then I look up. It's on the curtains. It's everywhere. On the inside, you can see it was like blood.
You knocked on the door?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody answer?
No.
What happened next?
Went home, called my mama, told her I seen blood. She told me to call the police.
Tallahassee police responded and busted down the front door. The first officer who went inside described finding the victims.
When I first got there, the front door was open. There was a woman that was laying right there in front of the door on the inside, and there was a lot of blood along the walls. I saw a shovel, as I remember seeing like a small red shovel there. We start down the hallway. There's a door immediately to the right that leads into a bathroom. I remember that it was really dark when I went in. I flipped the light switch. I walk in. There's a bathtub basically right there in front of me, and I'll never forget. I saw two deceased juveniles in the tub, and it's not the part that I remember the most was that I saw them. I called it on the radio, and then I immediately just walked back out like it was nothing, because I was in this mode of need to make sure that there's nobody in the house that's going to hurt us or hurt anybody else, and make sure that there's nobody else that's actually hurt.
That officer worked to secure the crime scene. He says he was standing on the street when he learned of a third missing child.
And a woman approached me and said, have you, did you find my daughter? Have you seen my grandkids? And then she, through her, she was explaining to me that there should have been 3 grandkids, and I was realizing that we had only found 2.
Okay. So did you take any steps to try and locate the third?
I did. I went to Sergeant Ormerod at that point. I said, hey, I got a witness who's saying that there should be 3 kids. I don't know. I didn't see them. Only ones I saw were the 2, but there's a possibility maybe that the third one could have been the tub, and I just didn't see it. And so at that point, I was assigned to go back in with a forensic specialist to go in back into that bathroom and verify that the third one was in there.
So you, again, entered the home, walked through the home, and went to verify whether the child was there or not in the bathroom.
Yes, sir.
Did you find that child?
Yes, sir.
Back now quickly to Stacy and Paula. Paula, we're getting a horrific scene set up here. 3 kids dead. We've got him in the bathtub. That officer shocked by it.
And you know what's telling about this officer's testimony? One of the first things that he testifies to is that he notices the spade shovel. He walks in and there's that spade shovel, which was very intentionally placed. And it's sort of like, back in the 80s, there was like the Zodiac killer and they left like, the calling card of the crime. And that's what this reminds me of. I think the defense case makes perfect sense. This woman was a drug runner. She skimmed $100,000. This is a violent Mexican drug cartel. We know from the news that just the other day, 9 people were viciously killed, 3 women and 6 little children in a brutal way. This is the kind of killing that Mexican drug cartels are known for. And the defense case is all wrapping up so tightly in this perfect little story that makes sense. And the prosecution's case is just basically, this was $20,000 in child support. And I agree with the defense that probably there are a lot of people in this country who owe that kind of money, and they're not committing murder.
They're not out doing this sort of thing. Stacey, I'm waiting for the defense to really get into some of that contested evidence, because today was really the chance for the prosecution to really set the stage. Here are the core facts of what happened. It's not really what's contested. The contested point is who actually did it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, there are a lot of things we're waiting for to see in the defense's case. One, Segura is expected to testify again. Okay, it perhaps worked for him a little bit the first time around, although it was a hung jury. It was 8-4 in his direction. And the other thing is Carlos Santos, this gang member who says that he ordered the hit, apparently has said he wants to testify this time around after taking the fifth the first time. So that is going to be a key witness for the defense if they actually have someone getting up there on the stand saying he ordered the hit.
It's going to boil down to who the jury believes. It's going to come down to the old-fashioned judging of body language and words. And those are the kind of trials we like to watch. And still ahead tonight here on The Debrief, sentencing for a Tennessee man who shot and killed another man who he said had been sexually abusing his girlfriend. Plus, the Connecticut man accused of working with his girlfriend to make his estranged wife disappear is back in court. An update as this case and others move forward along with The Debrief. Another day in court today for the Connecticut man accused of making his wife mysteriously disappear. Fotis Doulos and his girlfriend at the time, Michelle Troconis, are accused of tampering with evidence and hindering prosecution in the disappearance of estranged wife Jennifer Doulos. She disappeared after dropping her kids off at school. Attorneys for Fotis Doulos say the state needs to start handing over evidence, but today's hearing simply pushed the case back about another 2 months. A gag order in the case is limiting some of what we know, but Doulos' defense team is fighting that order through the appeals courts. Arguments in that appeal are scheduled for early December. Today, Fotis Doulos again litigated his custody battle, a civil matter, in the court of public opinion.
So the only thing I have to say again, for one more time, is that my only concern are my children. I care deeply about them, and I can't wait to be with them again. That's it. Thank you.
And as you heard there, Doulos and his attorney refused to answer my question about whether they are worried about the chance that the ex-girlfriend and current co-defendant, Michelle Troconis, might decide to flip and become a state's witness. The state's key witness has taken the stand in the trial of a Colorado man accused of killing his fiancée last Thanksgiving. Patrick Frazee is accused of beating Kelsey Barrett to death with a baseball bat. Authorities say Frazee then asked Crystal Lee, formerly known as Crystal Kenny, to clean up the aftermath. Lee said she was in a side relationship with Frazee, which she detailed from the witness stand. Barrett disappeared after this surveillance footage showed her grocery shopping with her baby around Thanksgiving last year. Other surveillance footage places Frazee at the crime scene 11 times the day authorities say he killed Barrett. He told police he'd been there only once that day. 7 women and 5 men are on the jury. Cameras, live tweeting, even a sketch artist banned from that courtroom. Local reporters say Lee testified that Frazee called her up on the night of her wedding to tell her to delay the ceremony. She ended up marrying, but she kept in touch with Frazee on and off. He was an old boyfriend, she said. At one point, she said Frazee gave her a dog and then threatened to kill the dog when she didn't pay for it. Lee's testimony continues today through day 4 of a trial expected to last 3 weeks. And sentencing today for the young Tennessee man who pleaded guilty to killing an older man who he said had sexually abused his girlfriend. 25-year-old Sean Foley will go to prison for 5.5 years for shooting and killing 44-year-old Jemmy Shelton. Foley recorded himself as he confronted Shelton during a sexual incident with the girlfriend. She testified twice at trial. Foley said Shelton attacked him, so he fired. Here is that recording.
All that's on recording that's recording right now. I swear to God, you sick. You with her again, and I will drop you.
Sean, stop.
No, that's watch your stop. Stop. That's too much.
Sean!
No, that's too much. You over there. Come here. Come here now. He was molesting her. I have it all on recording.
Did you shoot him?
Yes, he was molesting her.
Foley beat a first-degree murder charge at trial, but his jury was deadlocked as to second-degree murder. The plea deal in this case resulted in a much lighter sentence. During trial, Foley testified and described the shooting this way.
When I went out the door, he pushed her off of him, and she pulled her pants up and said, "Baby," and ran to me. And when she was running to me, he shifted his weight. He kicked his right leg out, and he leaned back in the chair, and he put his hand into his pocket. And I thought he was drawing a gun on me.
Did you ever see a gun? Did you ever see him with a gun?
With a gun, yes. This night specifically?
Yes. Did he have a gun right then?
He didn't get out before I drew mine.
Okay.
I was concealed, and when he did that, I just drew mine. I told him that if he touched her again, that I was going to drop him. I looked up, and he was in front of me, and he was running at me, and he had his hand out. And then he grabbed the top of my weapon, and I don't know how he got to me so fast, but it went off, and I just remember pushing her right backwards and trying to jump on top of her, and I don't know.
The girlfriend who was at the center of this dispute testified several times. At times, she said her sexual encounters with the victim were abusive. At other times, she said they were consensual. Here's how she answered questions about the shooting.
Can you tell us about what happened when Sean walked out?
I pulled my pants up, and Jimmy stood up, and that's when Sean started yelling at Jimmy. He told Jimmy to stop touching me.
Was Jimmy touching you when he came out?
I think he had his hand on my leg, but I don't really remember.
Did you ask Sean for help?
No.
Did you call for help?
No.
Did you scream for help?
No.
Did you need help from the defendant that night?
No.
Is the contact between you and Jimmy Shelton consensual that night?
Yes.
Was that meant to be the contact that was going to get you the car?
Yes.
How much was the car worth?
I don't know. We hadn't furthered any discussion.
Do you know what kind of car it was going to be?
No.
Do you know if he had made any arrangements to get you the car already?
I found out later, yes.
Did Jimmy ever tackle Sean?
I didn't see it happen.
Okay. What caused the defendant to shoot Jimmy Shelton?
I'm not sure.
Let's go to our guests one final time tonight. Paula Notari, Stacey Delicat. Stacey, so many bizarre factual scenarios piling up in this case. It's difficult to listen back to the testimony.
It is, you know, because it's a strange story. I mean, what's remarkable really is that this defendant, I mean, in this case, you had the whole shooting caught on camera, you know, and the defendant's own tape to begin with, and him testifying, giving his account. Then you have the girlfriend, you know, testifying about this weird relationship with her uncle. I mean, I think, look, the bottom line is in the sentencing, he probably got a good deal with 5 years, 6 months. I mean, he didn't dispute killing, the other man here, and but, you know, at least he doesn't have to go through another trial now.
Yeah, I mean, he pleaded out. He doesn't have to face a potentially much more serious consequence here. Paula, who was the best witness there?
Well, I thought Sean Foley was probably one of the best witnesses I've ever seen, defendants testifying right there. First of all, he came off as being young. He came off as being sort of like choir boy, like a Boy Scoutish. He was very clean cut, very soft spoken. In contrast to his girlfriend, former girlfriend, Miranda Goddard, who was, you could tell she's led a hard life. She had a sort of a harder affect, and I found her to be sort of desensitized, whereas he was very emotional, very credible. I believed what he was saying, and I could see why the jury came to the verdict that they did.
Yeah.
Exactly, and Stacey, you were
yeah,
not
I agree that, you know, his testimony, his demeanor, I mean, you believed him. He seemed really scared, very nervous, not like a violent individual.
Seemed like he was sorry to do it.
Yeah.
He felt that he had to because
agree.
he felt he was being attacked, and the jury was hung, but acquitted him of the top charge, was hung on the second one. Thanks a lot to both of you for joining us on The Debrief. That's all the time we have. We'll see you tomorrow.